In all fairness, I'm sitting around my house, got the day off, flicking through Twitter, flicking through YouTube. Um, Interestingly enough, I'm rereading for like the 10th time Rope Opera by Vince Russo. Yes, I'm a Russo guy when it comes down to it. And I got on to watching some Russo videos, and he has recently released a video 13 hours ago, I believe, actually, fundamentally, where he is basically saying Meltzer is dishonest, and he brings out the stats of why he's being dishonest about WWE and no WCW. And it's just got me thinking. I think Vince Russo is one of the most underappreciated guys in professional wrestling. I think I talked about this a few weeks back, interestingly enough, because he went away from the concept of what you would call traditional storylines or traditional tales at this time period in wrestling. People had an issue with it, but it wasn't. It's really funny because I don't think what Russo was doing was particularly new. I mean, I go on about this a hell of a lot. Andy Kaufman, Jolie, and Lawler, the King, man. That's kind of a celebrity concept there. And Kaufman was calling himself an intergender champion, and this was years before this. And it's crazy that we are still talking about what Russo was doing at WCW, or what he was doing in WWF. I mean, because everything he did, from my perspective, was high quality concepts. I mean, and look, I'm on chapter 32 of Russo's book, all right? And chapter 32, if you've read the book, is about David Arquette. And if you don't know who David Arquette is, he's the guy that was in the Scream movies. And if you're a wrestling fan, you know he did that absolutely horrific movie called Ready to Rumble. And this whole storyline affected wrestling in a lot of ways, or wrestling fans' minds in a lot of ways. And this is why it's super interesting. Me, I was totally for it. I knew who David Arquette was. I knew he was an actor and stuff like that. And it's something, in this book it says 8 years, but 20 odd years later, we're still talking about what Vince Russo did in a negative light in some format. And I was still confused about this, because I think Russo did everything to build on the modern product. Everything to build on the modern product. Now, this David Arquette story was money. It was money, because it had the whole entire industry talking about this. I mean, at the end of his chapter, he talks about this. One second, let me find this, because I think this is a super interesting quote, because we've got to remember, professional wrestling is a fucking business. Okay, so David Arquette flew the WCW title to Hollywood. His wife set on his wife on the movie set. She was filming. There were fellow actors such as Kurt Russell and Kevin Costner. Courtney was a something. David and the WC title. It was free publicity, man. So he was actually publicising the WCW title to build the brand, and it was an ingenious moveset, actually, fundamentally, because let me use it as a modern way. Why do you think Triple H signed Logan Paul? To bring a fan base in. And that is all Russo was doing. So if Russo now did exactly the same thing, he would be bringing in Logan Paul to get the crowds in, to make things more interesting. The only difference is, right, Triple H has not put a title on Logan Paul yet, which I think will happen fundamentally. But every single wrestling fan of that time period, I am a WCW guy, man. I am a WCW guy fundamentally. It was the product that made me have a passion for wrestling, along with Impact, TNA Impact. WCW was my show. And with people like DDP, people like Nash, people like Hogan and stuff like that, it built a product to be bigger now than anything else. And so did David Arquette. I think Vince Russo was slightly ahead of his time. I think Vince Russo did something that changed the business. And you know what? When he went into WCW, okay, the stats are itself. The stats are itself. Meltzer is dishonest, because I've done a bit of research on this. So in the last couple of hours, Vince Russo's put up a video saying Meltzer is dishonest. So the rating before Meltzer went in, all right, okay, was 3.1. The rating when Meltzer, the rating before Russo went in was 3.1. It was about 3.2 on a consistent basis. And it went up to 3.5. The last show before Russo went in, it was 2.5. And the 11 weeks after they left, it plummeted, man. The thing about it is the negativity towards Russo makes no sense for me. It makes no sense, and it is destroying the industry in a lot of ways. Because imagine if we weren't negative to Russo. Imagine if we actually told the truth about what Russo did for the industry. He might be at AEW, man. He might be rehired at WWE. He might be the guy running Impact Wrestling. Do you know what I'm saying? So we are being stupid towards the guys that pretty much have created the modern mindset of writing. Now, my question is for you people here. Now, this is my question, and this is frustrating me, fundamentally. This is frustrating me, the negativity towards Russo. Jim Cornette, Meltzer, so on and so on and so on. Okay, all right. Celebrity matches, all right, have always been there. We had Dennis Rodman going to WCW, Andy Kaufman, man. We've had people like Tyson appear face to face with Austin, all right. Okay, but Russo went one step further, okay, and he was pushing for publicity for the WCW title. And it says it in his fucking book in chapter 33. And the ratings were slowly going up. And do you know how good this publicity is? Because we're still bloody talking about it. We are still bloody talking about Vince Russo and David Arquette and Bash at the Beach and so on. My perspective, I'm an Impact guy. I'm a TNA Impact guy. Alright? Do you know my favourite things in life? I've got it in my new background on my picture here. My favourite things in life are Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, Thundercats, man, WCW, TNA, Insane Clown Posse, and NWA. Okay, yeah, and I'm a massive fan of things like The Office as well and The Muppets. Alright? Everything has a publicity concept that they do. Why do you think the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles did so many crossovers in the action figures? Why do you think NWA are bringing back Violent J from ICP? Okay, all right. Why do you think Impact Wrestling, okay, brought in Rampage, the MMA fighter? Do you get what I'm saying? And WCW with Arquette, Rodman, and so. It's publicity. It's a business. It's to get bums on seats, get people to watch it. And Russo, that's all he was doing. It is no different, okay, to what Tony Khan's doing. We're bringing Shaq versus Cody. No different with bringing American Alpha and having people like Jorge Masvidal knee flipping Jericho in the face. No different to Triple H bringing in Logan Paul and Bad Bunny. But we still criticise Vince Russo for putting the David Arquette title, the WCW title on David Arquette, and criticise some of his really, really good ideas. Do you know what I mean? Every writer, every creative might put 10 ideas on the table and maybe 2 of them are good. But I hold the viewpoint is a good 80% of what Russo did was awesome. Okay? And this isn't me ranting, this is totally random me coming on here, but this is how I feel about this subject, because I think this is getting ridiculous now, man. Getting ridiculous. Russo gets a lot of hate from Jim Cornette, and do you know what? Jim Cornette, there is no debate. The guy isn't a bad guy. Fundamentally, he likes a different format of wrestling. He's old school in that sense. Do you know what I mean? All right. But people like Meltzer, I kind of struggle with Meltzer in a lot of ways sometimes, because he makes up these insane ratings for no particular reason. All right. And as I've said this before, I personally hold the viewpoint of Kurt Angle being a Mount Rushmore wrestler because of what he did in TNA. What he said earlier in this week about if he was in WWE for flipping 20 years, he'd be a GOAT. No, TNA made you, boss. End of story. TNA made you the best possible wrestler, and that's why you're on my GOAT list, man. All right? But Meltzer never gave Angle a 5-star rating match, which I could name like 10 off my hand. I've done this on these things before. So what I'm trying to whack out to you guys now is that leave off Vince Russo, mate, because he was a creative genius. He changed the industry, and actually, if you look at the pattern, WWE are fundamentally with Logan Paul doing something very similar that Vince Russo is doing with Arquette, and it's all because of business. And Russo says in his book very clearly, wrote opera. Look at the free publicity. The free publicity WCW got of David Arquette. Alright? And everything he did was about the publicity, the creative writing, how to push the product forward. Genius, mate. Genius. In that sense. He was a writer's writer. And Triple H is doing similar things with Logan Paul, man. Why do you think Logan Paul has a contract with WWE? The reason why he has a contract with WWE is because of his YouTube following. Because of his insane amount of people that listen to Impulsive. And so look, man, this is a rant, and this is me being a bit frustrated, I think, more than anything else. We need to leave off Russo, man. Because Russo did factually go into, right, WCW, the ratings went up. What he did in the Attitude Era at WWF, WWE, whatever you want to call it, was insanely brilliant. Okay? What he did at TNA was great. He's hard on himself about TNA, but he shouldn't be, because he was there in the golden period. He was one of the senior writers with people like Dutch, with people like Disco. Do you know what I'm saying? So, listen. This is the wrestling business. Okay, and everything a writer does in the wrestling business, all right, is to get bums on seats in a stadium, is to get the TV ratings up, and to sell merch. And I don't think he failed on any of them things. Right? And this is Scholesy out here, man. This is me ranting because it's starting to frustrate me now, okay, that I'm not sure what wrestling fans want. I'm not sure what wrestling fans want anymore. I'm not sure what wrestling fans want. Because I'm not going to lie, I'm 35 years old, 36, 35, whatever my age is, man. I can't even remember. And wrestling fans, okay, do not understand that this is a show. This is choreographed violence. This is ballet, man. Alright? This has an end that has been written. I'm not going to say it's fake like Russo, because I don't see it like that, because they're doing stunts, they are clearly hurting themselves at times and stuff like that, so it's not fake, alright, in that element. But it has got a story. It has got a story, a clear story. So my thing is, we've got to get our brains into it. I'm not going to lie, I've said this a few times recently, I've gone off the whole 30-minute match thing. I mean, because I think it's lost. I was talking to a mate of mine that's in the wrestling industry recently, and we talked about it in a car outside a gym. Okay, we talked about this, that pay-per-views have been spoiled because there's too many pay-per-views. Okay, all right, and then fundamentally everybody wants a weekly pay-per-view on a wrestling show, and then you get silly gimps, all right, that are posting crap like, well, there was only 27% wrestling time in WWE Raw. Who cares? Enjoy the product. Enjoy the product. Because isn't it crazy that I remember when I was a kid that Scott Hall would do a headlock takedown, alright, okay, and then chat shit for 20 minutes and we were buzzed. We don't need this 30-minute match concept. There's nothing wrong with them at a pay-per-view, alright? But a weekly show is about building a story. And do you know what I mean? And this is what guys like Vince Russo did on a weekly basis for professional wrestling. This is something that is missing, in my perspective, from shows like AEW. Alright, in that sense. Because we've lost the concept of storytelling and now we want instant gratification. And I personally think, I used to hate people that did this when I was a kid. But back in my day, when we were kids, we had to wait for what we were getting, and especially with WCW when flipping Cartoon Network turned off and we got TNT TV, and we were a week behind anyway. And sometimes we found out from wrestling magazines and stuff like that. But I'm just confused with wrestling fans, man. Or am I just getting old? I don't know. I mean, I know I'm getting a bit grey beard, and I think Russo gets far too much hate. And this was me being very ranty, and I might get some hate off this, but I'm not overly bothered. But it's the important thing about professional wrestling now, and for the wrestling fans as well, is that wrestling is about the story. And I'm sort of struggling a bit with that in a lot of ways with wrestling. I really enjoy Impact Wrestling because Impact Wrestling gives me a story, and then there is a pay-per-view every couple of weeks, but I mean, at least there's something leading to it. It's like, I'm really excited about going to All In and going to a historical event, but I don't see any sort of like push towards it in that sense. The only bit of storytelling I've seen is yesterday when Grado and Jeff Jarrett flipping had a little scrap in the BBC Talk studio. I would have thought they could have built something big on that, but I mean, they might have if Hayter wasn't injured or anything like that. But yeah, I'm going off topic. But listen to me. I'll jump out now. But I kind of feel like we are missing the art of storytelling in wrestling. And I want that back. I feel like we're giving people like Vince Russo that did great creative work an unnecessary hard times. And from supposable industry moguls or whatever, being people like Meltzer, that are doing some, Jim Cornette. I tuned in for Vince Russo's stories, man. I didn't know it at the time, but as I get older and rewatch, I realise that. I tuned in for people like Eric Bischoff's stories, Vince McMahon's stories, man. Okay, Disco stories, do you know what I'm saying? And Dutch Mantel's stories. I love Dutch, man. Dutch is one of the best. When we talk about women's wrestling, which has been a topic on Twitter today, Dutch Mantel is a guy that doesn't get talked about enough because he was one of the guys that pushed the early knockouts. People like Awesome Kong, man. Think with your head. Go and do your research. But yeah, this is ranty as hell, mate. And I'm sorry. And I have a passion for professional wrestling. I have a passion for it in the sense of I live and breathe it. In the sense of I watch it consistently. I read about it. I try to educate myself on it. But I really want people to leave Russo alone because Russo knows his shit. He can be negative at times, but he knows his shit. And he was a dead decent creative writer. Yeah. But yeah, here's my rant, man. Enough love to people. Okay. Alright. I love all the wrestling fans, but listen, man. Let's go back to the storytelling. Let's go back to the storytelling of professional wrestling. But yeah, Scholesy out. You'll see me on Fridays. Alright, Friday, my Impact review show. And I'm bringing back the old school Scholesy talks where I just talk about pop culture as well and stuff like that. So you will see me on Fridays and Sundays and occasional rants like today. But in a bit.